Texarkana, a town with a line drawn right through its heart, one foot in Texas, the other in Arkansas. It was 1946. The war was over. The boys were home, and a certain kind of Rockwellian peace was supposed to have settled over America. In this town, like so many others, life moved at a gentle, predictable pace. Neighbors knew each other. Doors were left unlocked. The biggest news was often the high school football game, the price of cotton. The streets, lined with sturdy brick buildings and nascent businesses, hummed with the quiet confidence of a nation looking toward a brighter future. It was a simple time, a time of hope. But as the sun would dip below the horizon, casting long, inky shadows across the dual state avenues, another side of Texarkana would emerge. The nights were different. The rural roads that spider-webbed out from the town center became tunnels of profound darkness, flanked by dense woods, silent fields. Headlights would cut fleeting, ghostly shapes into the gloom before surrendering again to the black. This was a place where the familiar comfort of daylight gave way to an older, more primal unease. It was a Friday night, February 22nd, 1946. For Jimmy Hollis, 25, and his date, Mary Jean Larry, 19, it was supposed to be an ordinary evening, a movie, a late bite to eat, and then a quiet, parked conclusion on a secluded road known locally as Lover's Lane. The car radio crackled with the soft sounds of big band music, the windows fogging slightly in the cool night air. The world was just the two of them. Then, a sudden, blinding light. A flashlight beam sliced through the driver's side window, pinning them in its glare. A man's voice, rough and commanding, ordered them out of the car. He was a hulking shape against the faint moonlight, his face hidden by a crude white mask. In his hand, he held a pistol. Panic, cold and immediate, replaced the evening's romance. This was no prank, no simple robbery. The masked man's commands were terrifyingly specific. He ordered Jimmy Hollis to take off his pants. Then he struck. A vicious blow to Jimmy's head, and then another, and another. The attacker turned his attention to Mary Jean. He told her to run. He chased her down. What happened next was a brutal assault, born of pure malice. Yet through it all, Mary Jean fought. Somehow, in the chaos and the pain, she managed to get away. The police were called. They found Jimmy Hollis, dazed and seriously injured, but alive. Both he and Mary Jean had survived their encounter with the masked phantom. They were the lucky ones. But their harrowing story was only the beginning. The phantom had tasted violence, and he would be back. A month passed. On the morning of March 24th, a motorist noticed a 1941 Oldsmobile parked just off Rich Road. Something about it seemed wrong. Inside the car and on the ground nearby were Richard Griffin, 29, and Polly Ann Moore, 17. Both had been shot in the back of the head, execution style. A pattern began to emerge. Remote spots where young couples sought privacy. The town reeled. The first attack had been frightening. This was paralyzing. Police descended on the scene. Detectives in long coats searched for clues, a footprint, a shell casing, anything. But the killer was, as his moniker would suggest, a phantom. The story spread like wildfire, through diners, barbershops, over backyard fences and party-line telephones. The name Phantom Killer began to be whispered. He was a ghost, a bogeyman made real. Spring should have brought renewal. Instead, dread. On the weekend of the junior prom, the killer returned. Paul picked up Betty Jo after her saxophone set at a VFW social. They likely drove to a quiet spot in Spring Lake Park. By morning, Paul was found by a fence, shot 4 times. Betty Jo lay nearly 2 miles away, shot in the chest and in the face. The phantom hadn't just killed them, he had hunted them. The town's fear curdled into outright panic. Texarkana became synonymous not with dual-state charm, but a faceless nocturnal terror. The spring rains felt like tears for a town losing its innocence. The panic that had been simmering now boiled over. Gun sales skyrocketed. People bought new locks for doors and windows. No one went out after dark unless they had to. Streets turned eerie and silent. Every shadow held a threat. Every sound was the phantom. People didn't just lock their doors, they barricaded them. Families slept in shifts with shotguns and pistols nearby. Prank calls and panic flooded the lines. A frantic search one night turned up nothing. On Friday, May 3rd, the phantom changed his methods. He came to a home. Virgil Starks sat in his chair, listening to a radio program. Suddenly, 2 shots blasted through a window, striking Virgil in the back of the head. He died instantly. Katie heard the shatter and the thud. As she reached for the phone, she was shot twice. The killer was now inside the house. Despite her injuries, she escaped to her sister's home for help. She survived. This was the final confirmed attack, escalation from assault to murder to home invasion. If you weren't safe in your home, where were you safe? Even the Rangers were baffled. The phantom killed 5, wounded 3, and then seemed to vanish. The city was a tinderbox. The phantom, the invisible flame. Texarkana would never be the same. The investigation became one of the most extensive manhunts of its era, and one of the most frustrating. 2 local departments at the center, soon joined by Arkansas State Police, the FBI, and the Texas Rangers. Lone Wolf's arrival brought a flicker of hope. They worked around the clock, fueled by coffee and desperation. They painstakingly processed scenes, but the phantom was elusive. Shell casings from a .32 caliber weapon. Few, if any, usable prints. Tracks often led to dead ends. Without DNA, databases, or sophisticated ballistics, they relied on witnesses, shoe leather work, and intuition. Only Mary Jean Larry and Jimmy Hollis could describe him. Tall, over 6 feet, a white mask over his head. A man defined only by what couldn't be seen. Assurances rang hollow as weeks turned into months. Dozens were arrested and questioned. Local troublemakers, known criminals, suspicious drifters, one by one, cleared. The phantom remained a ghost. As summer wore on without another attack, the trail grew cold. Investigators focused on UL Swinney, 29, a career criminal, counterfeiting, car theft, burglary, arrested in July on an unrelated charge. His wife, Peggy, told a damning story, that UL was the phantom and that she had been present during the Booker and Martin murders. Her testimony seemed to fit, but as his wife, her testimony was hearsay under Texas law unless she testified directly, and she refused. She recanted and reaffirmed repeatedly. No physical evidence, no fingerprints, no murder weapon. He was convicted as a habitual offender for car theft, life in prison. Many considered the case closed, but a conviction for theft is not a conviction for murder. Officially, the phantom killer was never caught. Swinney maintained his innocence until his death in 1994. Though the killing stopped, the story did not. It seeped into the soil of Texarkana, part identity, part scar. Today is September 30th, 2025. Nearly 80 years have passed. The vintage cars are collectibles. The crackling radios, replaced by smartphones. Forensic science made leaps the detectives of 1946 could only dream of. Yet the case remains frozen in time, unsolved. The files are cold. The witnesses are gone. The secrets of those moonlit nights are likely buried with them. The story endures because it touches a primal fear, the unknown. No clear motive, no connection beyond vulnerability. The line between safety and terror can be as thin as a pane of glass, or as dark as a country road at midnight. The ghosts of 1946 still haunt Texarkana. Quiet corners still carry whispers. The story is part of the town's DNA, a somber chord in its history. A 1976 film cemented the legend, creative liberties, eerie atmosphere, an iconic sack mask, turning tragedy into folklore. Morbid curiosity and scholarly interest keep the story alive. Evil doesn't always have a clear face or a simple motive. Some questions remain unanswered. Did he die in a Texas prison? or melt back into society as a quiet neighbor with a dark secret? We will never know. The twilight of uncertainty is where this story ends, forever suspended between fact and folklore.